Millionaire panics when his $423 jet fails, until a poor 7-year-old girl makes a shocking proposal, leaving him heartbroken. Before we tell this tale, hit like and tell us where you're from and one value that guides your life. The Gulfstream G650ER shuddered violently at 37,000 feet above the Colorado Rockies, throwing 28-year-old Marcus Wellington against the Italian leather seat like a ragdoll in a hurricane. His crystal champagne flute exploded against the mahogany conference table, sending Dom Perignon cascading across quarterly reports that documented his tech empire's latest billion-dollar acquisition of 3 European startups. "What the hell was that, Captain Rodriguez?" Marcus barked into the platinum-plated intercom, his usually ice-cold composure cracking like Arctic ice under a blowtorch. The perfectly climate-controlled cabin suddenly felt suffocating, filled with the metallic taste of pure terror. "Sir, we're experiencing catastrophic engine failure on both Rolls-Royce turbofans," came the reply, Captain Rodriguez's voice carrying 23 years of commercial aviation experience. But Marcus detected the unmistakable tremor of a man who'd never faced anything like this. "I'm declaring a Mayday emergency and requesting immediate descent to Denver International Airport. Please secure yourself immediately." Marcus stared out the reinforced window at the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains below, their snow-capped summits suddenly transforming from picture-perfect postcard scenery into enormous granite tombstones, marking what might become his final resting place. His $423 million flying palace, custom-built in Germany, with every conceivable luxury from gold-plated fixtures to a bedroom suite that rivaled 5-star hotels, was now nothing more than an incredibly expensive metal coffin hurtling toward Earth at terminal velocity. Acrid black smoke began seeping through the cabin's ventilation system as warning lights bathed everything in hellish crimson. The aircraft's state-of-the-art entertainment system flickered and died, leaving only the terrifying symphony of screaming alarms and groaning metal. Marcus thought about his estranged father's prophetic words during their last bitter confrontation 3 years ago. "Money can't buy you out of every problem, son. Someday you'll learn that the hard way." He'd laughed dismissively then, surrounded by the comfort of his Manhattan penthouse. He wasn't laughing now. His diamond-encrusted iPhone buzzed incessantly with notifications, stock prices fluctuating, board meetings requiring his immediate attention, merger deadlines, a digital world that expected Marcus Wellington to have every answer to every problem. But at this terrifying moment, watching the altimeter numbers spin downward like a demonic slot machine from hell itself, he felt smaller and more powerless than he had since his poverty-stricken childhood in Detroit's abandoned warehouses. The Gulfstream lurched again with sickening violence, and Marcus grabbed the armrest with white-knuckled desperation, his manicured hands trembling uncontrollably. Outside the window, massive storm clouds gathered like circling vultures waiting for their feast, and he couldn't help wondering if his accumulated billions would mean anything when he stood before whatever judgment awaited in the afterlife. Then he saw something that made his rational mind question his sanity. A small figure sitting calmly in the cabin's corner, someone he absolutely hadn't noticed during the pre-flight security check at Martha's Vineyard. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, with tangled auburn hair that hadn't seen professional styling and clothes that looked like they'd been rescued from several charity bins. She sat with impossible serenity, watching him with eyes that held wisdom and knowledge far beyond her tender years. "Who are you?" Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible over the screaming engines and howling wind outside. She smiled with a gap-toothed grin that somehow made his absolute terror pause for just a moment. "I'm Lucy Patterson, Mr. Wellington, and your fancy airplane's about to become a very expensive crater unless you listen real careful to what I'm going to tell you next." "That's completely impossible," Marcus stammered, frantically unbuckling his seatbelt as the Gulfstream continued its nightmare descent toward the unforgiving Colorado landscape. There's absolutely no way you could be on this aircraft. My personal security team cleared everyone before takeoff. Every passenger, every crew member, every piece of luggage underwent thorough inspection. Before takeoff from Martha's Vineyard at exactly 2:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Lucy interrupted with disturbing precision, her small voice cutting through his mounting panic like a surgical blade through silk. You were sitting right there reviewing the Blackstone merger documents, drinking your third mimosa of the afternoon, and complaining to your assistant Jennifer about the catering, not including those fancy French macarons you specifically requested. Marcus's blood transformed into liquid nitrogen in his veins. Those intricate details weren't public knowledge, weren't recorded anywhere except in his private scheduling system that required biometric authentication to access. How could you possibly know any of that information? Lucy stood up with the perfect balance of an experienced sailor navigating rough seas, completely unfazed by the aircraft's violent shaking and terrifying mechanical sounds. Her worn sneakers, held together with silver duct tape and displaying more holes than fabric, squeaked against the mirror-polished hardwood floor as she approached him with unsettling confidence. "Mr. Marcus Wellington, you've got approximately 4 minutes and 37 seconds before Captain Rodriguez loses complete control of this aircraft. You want to live through the next 5 minutes?" The intercom crackled with increasing desperation. "Sir, we're passing through 15,000 feet and dropping at an unsustainable rate. I need you to immediately assume crash position and prepare for emergency landing procedures." "Listen to me very, very carefully," Lucy said, her child's voice somehow carrying more natural authority than grown CEOs in boardrooms who controlled multinational corporations. "Your Rolls-Royce engines didn't fail because of routine mechanical problems or manufacturing defects. Someone deliberately sabotaged your fuel lines with a military-grade corrosive agent designed to create exactly this scenario. The FBI forensic team will find microscopic traces of it in the wreckage, if there happens to be any wreckage left to examine." Marcus felt his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis, and not just from the plummeting aircraft that was carrying him toward certain death. His mind raced through potential enemies, business rivals, disgruntled employees, anyone with motive and means. "You're actually saying someone tried to murder me?" "I'm saying someone already succeeded in murdering you, unless you do exactly what I tell you to do." Lucy's impossibly ancient eyes held depths that belonged in a face 4 decades older, carrying secrets that made international espionage seem like children's games. "You see those supposedly emergency parachutes stored in the wall compartment behind your fully stocked bar? They're purely decorative props. The real functional parachutes were systematically removed during your last routine maintenance check in Miami 2 weeks ago." His hands shook violently as he fumbled for his phone, desperate for any connection to the outside world. No signal bars, no hope. Of course, there was no cellular signal at this altitude during an emergency. "The relatively good news," Lucy continued with the disturbing calm of someone announcing tomorrow's weather forecast, "is that I know exactly how to fix your airplane's problems and get you safely back on the ground. The significantly bad news is that my help is going to cost you absolutely everything you think you own in this world." Marcus stared at this impossible child who spoke like an ancient prophet while dressed like a refugee from society's forgotten margins. Outside the reinforced windows, Denver's sprawling skyline grew larger and more menacing with each terrifying second that passed. "What exactly do you want from me?" "Want," he whispered through lips that felt like sandpaper. Lucy's gap-toothed smile returned, simultaneously innocent and absolutely terrifying. "I want you to give my 3 brothers and me every single thing you possess, every dollar in every account, every stock option and investment portfolio, every property deed and real estate holding, every offshore account you think nobody else knows about." The aircraft shuddered again with mechanical agony, and Marcus felt gravity pulling them relentlessly toward their doom. "And in exchange for everything I own?" he asked, knowing he already understood the answer. "In exchange," Lucy said with the finality of a judge delivering a death sentence, "I'll save your miserable life." "You're completely insane," Marcus gasped, gripping the leather armrest with desperate strength as the Gulf Stream plummeted another 1,000 feet in mere seconds, the G-forces making his stomach feel like it was trying to escape through his throat. "Even if I wanted to comply with your ridiculous demands, I couldn't possibly transfer billions of dollars from a crashing airplane 30,000 feet above the ground." Lucy reached into her tattered backpack, a faded Disney princess design that looked like it had been rescued from a dumpster behind a thrift store, and pulled out a tablet device that absolutely didn't belong in the same universe as her poverty-stricken appearance. The mysterious device looked like cutting-edge technology from a decade in the future, its holographic screen displaying real-time financial data that Marcus had never seen outside his most classified corporate servers, protected by military-grade encryption. Biometric emergency transfer authorization through Wellington Industries' classified contingency protocol Omega-7, she said, her small fingers swiping through complex screens with the natural expertise of a Wall Street veteran who'd spent decades mastering international finance. "Your father, Harrison Wellington, secretly installed this system after the devastating 2008 financial crisis nearly destroyed your family's empire. You never discovered its existence because you were too busy partying at Yale and spending trust fund money on expensive toys." Marcus's jaw dropped open in absolute shock. Omega-7 was his deceased father's most highly classified contingency plan, theoretically known only to 3 people on the entire planet. His father had died 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer, taking those apocalyptic secrets with him to his grave. Or so Marcus had always believed, until this impossible moment. 8,000 feet and falling like a stone, sir." Captain Rodriguez's voice cracked through the intercom like a bullwhip cutting through leather. "We're not going to make any runway at this rate of descent." Lucy held up the futuristic tablet, its impossible screen displaying Marcus's complete financial empire laid bare in terrifying detail. Every hidden offshore account, every shell company registered in foreign countries, every asset he'd thought was completely untraceable by government agencies or corporate rivals. "Your thumbprint and retinal scan, Mr. Wellington, right here, right now, or we all become very expensive crater decorations scattered across Colorado farmland." "This is criminal extortion," Marcus shouted over the increasingly deafening sound of screaming wind and failing engines outside the aircraft. "This is simply business," Lucy replied, with the ice-cold precision of a seasoned international negotiator who'd orchestrated billion-dollar deals. "You built your massive fortune by systematically destroying smaller companies and absorbing their assets. You've financially ruined thousands of families without losing a single minute of sleep. Consider this karma with a non-negotiable deadline." The aircraft's emergency oxygen masks suddenly dropped from the ceiling like yellow flowers of impending death. Marcus stared at them, then at Lucy, then at the rapidly approaching ground visible through his window that was growing terrifyingly larger with each heartbeat. "Who are you, really?" he demanded, desperation making his voice crack. "I'm exactly who I told you I am. Lucy Patterson, 8 years old, from the trailer park community that you're planning to demolish next month for your new Denver headquarters construction project." Her voice never wavered, even as another violent mechanical shudder threw Marcus against the bulkhead, hard enough to bruise his ribs. "My brothers are Tommy, age 12, Jake, age 14, and Bobby, age 16. Our parents, Michael and Sarah Patterson, died 18 months ago in a catastrophic car accident caused by defective brake systems manufactured by one of your subsidiary companies." Marcus felt all the air leave his lungs as surely as if they'd already crashed into the mountains. 5,000 feet and dropping. Rodriguez screamed through the intercom. Lucy extended the tablet toward him with steady hands. "Your choice, Mr. Wellington. Die rich, guilty, and completely alone, or live poor and maybe, just maybe, finally discover what redemption actually feels like. Marcus's perfectly manicured finger hovered over the biometric scanner like a hummingbird frozen in time, while the unforgiving ground rushed up to meet their falling aircraft like an enormous concrete fist preparing to crush them all. Through the absolute chaos of shrieking alarms and Captain Rodriguez's increasingly frantic radio communications with Denver Air Traffic Control, one crystalline thought formed in his mind with perfect, terrifying clarity. This impossibly composed 8-year-old girl somehow knew intimate details about his business empire that his own carefully vetted board of directors didn't possess. 3,000 feet! Emergency rescue vehicles are standing by at Denver International, but at this rate of descent, the intercom cut to crackling static that sounded like the universe itself was tearing apart. "The brake system lawsuit," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper against the mechanical symphony of impending doom. Patterson versus Wellington Automotive Manufacturing. That case was settled out of court for $12 million. The family's identities were permanently sealed under a comprehensive confidentiality agreement that my court-appointed legal guardian signed under extreme financial duress, Lucy finished, her small fingers continuing to dance across the tablet surface with inhuman precision and speed. Bobby was driving our parents' car that night. Jake was riding in the front passenger seat. Tommy was in the back seat with me. We watched our mother and father die because your company's high-powered lawyers convinced a federal judge that 23 previous documented brake failures weren't sufficient evidence to justify a costly vehicle recall. The Gulfstream's titanium frame groaned and protested like a living creature experiencing unimaginable agony. Through the reinforced windows, Marcus could see individual automobiles on Denver's highway system, growing larger and more distinct with each terrifying heartbeat that brought them closer to impact. 2,000 feet and falling. How is any of this possible? Marcus gasped, his billionaire's cynicism crumbling like ancient parchment in a hurricane. How are you physically here on this aircraft? How do you know about classified protocol Omega-7? How does a child possess technology that doesn't exist in any laboratory? Lucy's ancient eyes met his directly, and for one impossible moment, Marcus glimpsed something that made his lifetime of ruthless corporate skepticism evaporate completely. He saw absolute, unwavering faith that transcended human understanding, the kind of spiritual certainty that moved mountains and parted seas in biblical legends. My grandmother, God rest her beautiful soul, used to tell me that when divine justice demands satisfaction, the universe finds a way to balance the scales. Lucy said with the simple wisdom of someone who'd witnessed miracles that defied scientific explanation. She also used to say that airplanes are just big metal birds, and birds don't fall from the sky unless someone deliberately clips their wings. She reached into her mysterious backpack again and extracted a small device that resembled a hybrid between the latest smartphone technology and a sophisticated mechanics diagnostic computer. Red warning lights blinked in complex patterns that Marcus didn't recognize, but somehow instinctively understood meant death was measuring the remaining distance in mere seconds rather than minutes. The military-grade corrosive agent I mentioned earlier? It's systematically eating through your aircraft's fuel delivery lines at a precisely calculated rate of 0.3 millimeters per second. Lucy spoke like she was discussing weekend weather forecasts rather than imminent catastrophic death. In approximately 97 seconds, both engines will experience total catastrophic failure, followed immediately by fuel tank rupture and explosive fireball that will be visible from 3 states. Explosive fireball. Lucy's gap-toothed smile returned, somehow managing to be more terrifying than any corporate hostile takeover Marcus had ever orchestrated or survived. Let's just say my 3 brothers and I learned some very interesting and highly specialized skills during our 2 years navigating the foster care system. Bobby's particularly gifted with advanced chemistry applications. 1,000 feet. Denver International Airport's main runway appeared below them like a concrete lifeline extending from heaven itself. "Your thumb on that scanner, Mr. Wellington," Lucy said, holding the tablet steady despite the aircraft's violent shaking. "Transfer everything you own to us, or everything you are ends right here, right now, in approximately 60 seconds. Marcus pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner with the finality of a man signing his own death warrant. The tablet immediately chimed with a sound like cathedral bells announcing Easter morning, and instantly Marcus watched his entire life's work evaporate into digital nothingness with the efficiency of a cosmic deletion. Stock portfolios worth billions of dollars transferred seamlessly to 4 names: Lucy Patterson, Tommy Patterson, Jake Patterson, and Bobby Patterson. Real estate holdings spanning 6 continents, from Manhattan penthouses to Swiss chalets to private Caribbean islands, signed over with electronic signatures he'd never physically made, but that were somehow legally binding under international law. Bank accounts from the Cayman Islands to numbered Swiss vaults to Dubai investment funds emptied in microseconds, their contents flowing like digital rivers into accounts that hadn't existed 5 minutes earlier. "Transfer completed successfully," the tablet announced in a computerized female voice that sounded like an angel delivering judgment. "Marcus Wellington, current net worth $0.00. All assets successfully redistributed to designated beneficiaries." Lucy immediately began working with her strange diagnostic device, her small fingers flying across its surface with the desperate intensity of a heart surgeon performing emergency transplantation surgery on a patient flattening on the operating table. The Gulfstream's engines, which had been screaming like mechanical banshees announcing the apocalypse, suddenly quieted to their normal, expensive purr that had cost more than most people's houses. Engine function restored to full operational parameters. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom, absolute disbelief evident in every syllable he spoke. "I don't understand what just happened up there, but we're stable at 1,500 feet and climbing steadily. Requesting permission for standard approach and emergency landing at Denver International." Marcus stared at Lucy with the expression of a man who'd just witnessed his entire understanding of reality shatter like crystal hitting concrete. She had just systematically stripped him of everything he'd spent his adult life building, while simultaneously saving his life through what could only be described as a miracle that defied every law of physics and probability he'd learned at Harvard Business School. She was now carefully packing her futuristic diagnostic device back into her Disney princess backpack, like she'd just finished her elementary school homework assignment, rather than performing technological wizardry that shouldn't exist outside of science fiction movies. "How?" was all Marcus could manage to say, his voice hoarse from screaming and terror. "Bobby's really, really good with advanced chemistry applications," Lucy repeated with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing their family's ordinary talents. "Tommy's even better with sophisticated electronics and computer systems. Jake's the one who figured out how to crack your supposedly impenetrable security systems and financial firewalls. And me?" She shrugged with the casual confidence of someone who'd just performed a genuine miracle. "I'm good at mathematics. Really, really good at mathematics that most people can't understand." The Gulfstream touched down on Denver International's main runway with barely a bump. Captain Rodriguez's 23 years of professional aviation experience evident in the smooth landing, despite their brush with death that had lasted exactly 11 minutes and 47 seconds. "Mr. Wellington," Lucy said, standing up and shouldering her backpack as the aircraft taxied toward the terminal through gathering twilight, "you're about to discover what life is actually like for normal people. No more private jets or helicopters. No more 7-course meals prepared by celebrity chefs. No more unlimited credit cards or personal assistants managing every detail of your existence. Marcus felt a different kind of panic rising in his chest, not the sharp terror of imminent death, but the slow, creeping dread of someone who'd never learned basic survival skills. "I don't know how to live like that. I've never had to live like that." "That's perfectly okay," Lucy said, walking toward the aircraft's door with the confidence of someone who owned the world, which, technically, she now did. "My 3 brothers and I are going to teach you everything you need to know." She reached the exit door, then paused and looked back at him with those impossibly wise eyes. "Oh, and Mr. Wellington, your luxury apartment in the Denver Four Seasons penthouse? We're keeping that one for special occasions. You'll be staying with us in our trailer home, at least until we can afford to move somewhere with more reliable heating and plumbing that works consistently." The aircraft door opened with a soft hydraulic hiss, letting in the crisp Colorado evening air and the distant sound of emergency vehicles that were no longer needed for a rescue operation. "Welcome to the Patterson family," Lucy called over her shoulder as she walked down the stairs into her new life as one of the world's youngest billionaires. "I really hope you like macaroni and cheese, because that's what we're having for dinner tonight." Marcus Wellington stood in the doorway of a single-wide trailer home that could have fit comfortably inside his former walk-in closet exactly 17 times, with room left over for a small library. The glittering Denver skyline stretched across the horizon like a jewelry display, a magnificent view he'd once commanded from his penthouse office 43 floors above the city streets. Now just a taunting reminder of everything he'd lost during 37 minutes of absolute terror at 37,000 feet above the Colorado Rockies. "It ain't much to look at, but it's home," said Bobby Patterson, extending a work-calloused 16-year-old hand that had somehow engineered the chemical salvation of Marcus's life through knowledge that belonged in graduate-level university laboratories. Bobby was tall for his age, with shoulders broadened by summer construction work and eyes that carried the enormous weight of being the oldest sibling in a family that had lost everything twice in less than 2 years. Tommy, 12 years old, peered around Bobby's shoulder with the natural curiosity of a born inventor whose mind operated like a supercomputer processing infinite possibilities. Circuit boards, microprocessors, and electronic components were scattered across every available surface of the tiny living room like technological confetti celebrating some mad scientist's birthday party. "I've been working on completely upgrading the trailer's electrical system," he said, with obvious pride, gesturing toward his electronic kingdom. "We've got high-speed wireless internet now, and I rigged up a security system that would make your former corporate headquarters protection seem like a child's toy." Jake, 14, sat at a folding card table that served triple duty as dining room, homework desk, and command center, surrounded by textbooks that looked like they'd survived several natural disasters and emerged victorious. His fingers moved across a laptop computer keyboard with the same fluid precision Lucy had demonstrated on her mysterious tablet during their airborne encounter. "I've been continuously monitoring all the financial transfers we executed," he said, without looking up from his multiple screens displaying scrolling data. "Everything's completely clean and legal. No red flags from the Securities and Exchange Commission, Federal Bureau of Investigation, or Internal Revenue Service. As far as the digital financial world knows, you voluntarily donated your entire fortune to legitimate charity." "Is that what you call yourselves?" Marcus asked, his voice hollow as an empty tomb. "Charity cases." Lucy appeared from what he assumed was a bedroom, having changed from her airplane clothes into pajamas decorated with cartoon unicorns that sparkled with rainbow glitter. "We call ourselves survivors, Mr. Wellington. Just like you're about to become, assuming you're willing to learn." The trailer's walls were thin enough that Marcus could clearly hear their neighbor's television, broadcasting what sounded like a game show through the fake wood paneling. The carpet displayed stains that told stories he definitely didn't want to imagine in detail. The refrigerator hummed, with the mechanical wheeze of an appliance clinging to life through pure stubbornness and prayer. "Where exactly will I sleep?" he asked. the crushing reality of his complete transformation beginning to sink in like ice water soaking through expensive cotton. "Couch pulls out into a bed," Bobby said, patting a piece of furniture that looked like it had been heroically rescued from multiple floods and possibly a tornado. "Lucy takes the back bedroom because she's the youngest. Tommy and Jake share the middle room with bunk beds. I get the front room that's barely bigger than a closet. You get the living room and a spectacular view of Mr. Henderson's garbage cans." Marcus sank onto the couch, which received him with all the comfort and support of sitting on a bag of concrete rocks wrapped in sandpaper. 24 hours ago, he'd been reviewing multi-million-dollar acquisition proposals while lying on Egyptian cotton sheets worth more than most families made in 6 months. Now he was homeless, penniless, and entirely dependent on 4 children who had every conceivable reason to despise everything about his existence. "Why?" he whispered, the question emerging from depths of confusion he'd never experienced. "You could have easily let me die in that crash. You could have taken all my money after the wreckage was scattered across the mountains. Why save someone who caused your parents' death?" Lucy curled up in an armchair that was more silver duct tape than original upholstery, her ancient eyes studying him like he was a complicated puzzle she was still learning to solve piece by piece. "Because," she said with the simple wisdom of someone who understood truths that escaped most adults, "dead people can't learn to become better people. And Mr. Wellington, you've got a whole lot of learning to do before you earn the right to call yourself human." Outside the trailer's thin walls, Denver's city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and Marcus realized his real journey was just beginning. Marcus woke up on the couch that felt like sleeping on concrete wrapped in sandpaper, his back screaming in agony from a night of tossing and turning. The thin walls of the trailer had provided him with an intimate symphony of his neighbors' lives, barking dogs, crying babies, and televisions that never seemed to sleep. "Rise and shine, Mr. Wellington," Bobby called from the kitchen area, which was barely large enough for one person to stand comfortably. "Breakfast is ready, and we've got a big day ahead of us." Marcus stumbled toward the smell of bacon and eggs, his designer suit wrinkled beyond recognition. He'd slept in his clothes because nobody had thought to mention he'd need pajamas, and everything he'd owned was now legally theirs. "Coffee?" Lucy offered, holding up a chipped mug that had seen better decades. "I only drink Ethiopian single-origin beans," Marcus muttered, then caught himself. Yes, please. Thank you." Tommy looked up from his laptop, surrounded by electronic components that seemed to multiply overnight. "We need to talk about your new life, Mr. Wellington. You can't just exist here without contributing something useful to our family." "I ran a multi-billion-dollar corporation," Marcus protested. "I think I can contribute plenty." Jake snorted without looking up from his textbooks. "Yeah? Can you cook? Clean? Fix a broken toilet? Change a flat tire?" "Because those are the skills that matter in our world." The reality hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd never cooked a meal, never cleaned anything, never fixed anything with his own hands. His entire life had been cushioned by assistants, housekeepers, mechanics, and servants who handled every practical detail of existence. I can learn," he said quietly. "Good," Bobby said, setting a plate of eggs in front of him, "because today you're going to get your first job. The construction site where I work part-time needs someone to move materials and clean up debris. It pays $8 an hour." $8 an hour. Marcus had made more than that per second during profitable quarters. "I don't know anything about construction." "Then you'll learn," Lucy said with that unsettling wisdom. "The same way we learned to survive after our parents died. The same way we learned to navigate foster care. The same way we learned skills that shouldn't exist." She exchanged a meaningful look with her brothers, and Marcus sensed there were still secrets in this family that went far deeper than he'd imagined. "There's something else," Tommy said, his fingers stopping their dance across the keyboard. "The FBI is investigating your plane crash. They found traces of that corrosive agent Lucy mentioned. They want to interview you about possible enemies who might want you dead." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Someone had actually tried to murder him, and he had no idea who or why. His business dealings had made him many enemies, but attempted murder seemed extreme even for corporate warfare. "What do I tell them?" he asked. Lucy's ancient eyes met his. "The truth, Mr. Wellington, that someone tried to kill you, and 4 children you'd wronged saved your life instead. But I'd leave out the part about how we did it." Outside, a car horn honked twice. "That's your ride to the construction site," Bobby said, tossing Marcus a pair of work boots that looked like they'd survived several construction projects. "Hope you're ready to discover what honest work feels like." The construction foreman, a weathered man named Red Murphy, looked Marcus up and down with the expression of someone examining a particularly useless piece of equipment. "You're Bobby's new guy? The one who needs work?" Marcus nodded, trying to ignore how the work boots pinched his feet, and the hard hat made his scalp itch. Around him, the construction site buzzed with activity as workers poured concrete for what would become another office building in Denver's expanding downtown district. "Ever done manual labor before?" Red asked, spitting tobacco juice into a paper cup. "I've supervised many construction projects," Marcus replied, which earned him snorts of laughter from nearby workers. "Supervising ain't the same as doing, college boy," Red said. "You're on cleanup crew. That means you move materials where we need them, clean up debris, and try not to get yourself killed. Think you can handle that without your secretary?" For 8 hours, Marcus hauled wheelbarrows full of broken concrete, sorted rebar into organized piles, and swept construction dust that seemed to regenerate itself faster than he could clean it. His hands, which had never done more strenuous work than signing documents, were raw and bleeding within the first hour. "Tougher than it looks, ain't it?" said Miguel, a worker who'd taken pity on Marcus and showed him how to properly lift heavy materials without destroying his back. During lunch break, sitting on a pile of lumber and eating a bologna sandwich from a paper bag, Marcus watched the other workers. They talked about their families, their bills, their hopes for overtime pay that might let them afford Christmas presents for their children. These were the people his company's cost-cutting measures had affected, the ones who lost jobs when he moved manufacturing overseas. "You're thinking pretty hard there, boss man," Miguel observed. "I'm realizing I never understood what my decisions actually cost real people," Marcus admitted. Miguel nodded. "Rich folks usually don't. They see numbers on spreadsheets, not faces around dinner tables." When the workday ended, Marcus could barely lift his arms. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest as he climbed into Bobby's beat-up pickup truck for the ride home. "How'd it go?" Bobby asked, starting the truck that coughed like an old man with pneumonia. "I earned $32 after taxes," Marcus said, staring at the crumpled bills in his torn hands. $32 for 8 hours of the hardest work I've ever done in my life. "Welcome to reality," Bobby said. "That's what my dad made when he was working construction to support our family. Mom worked 2 part-time jobs just to help pay rent." They drove in silence through Denver's evening traffic, past the gleaming towers that Marcus had once owned or planned to own. Now, those buildings looked different to him, not symbols of success, but monuments to the distance between the wealthy and everyone else. Back at the trailer, Lucy was waiting with dinner and a first aid kit. "Let me see those hands," she said, examining his torn palms with the expertise of someone who'd treated many injuries. As she cleaned and bandaged his wounds, Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before: gratitude for simple kindness from someone he'd wronged. "Lucy," he said quietly, "how did you really save that plane? What you kids can do. It's not normal." She paused in her bandaging, her ancient eyes studying his face. "Some things can't be explained, Mr. Wellington. Sometimes you just have to accept that the universe has ways of balancing scales that seem permanently tipped." Outside the trailer, Denver's lights twinkled like stars, and Marcus realized he was beginning to see the world through completely different eyes. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen sat across from Marcus in the trailer's tiny living room, her sharp eyes taking in details that made him uncomfortably aware of how far he'd fallen. Her partner, Agent Rodriguez, stood by the door taking notes as she questioned him about the plane crash. "Let me understand this correctly, Mr. Wellington," Agent Chen said, consulting her tablet. "You're claiming you have no idea who might want to kill you. A man who's destroyed dozens of companies and eliminated thousands of jobs." Marcus shifted on the uncomfortable couch, very aware that Lucy, Tommy, Jake, and Bobby were listening from the kitchen. "My business practices were aggressive but legal. Corporate competition doesn't usually escalate to attempted murder." "Usually," Agent Rodriguez noted, "but you've made some particularly nasty enemies. The Brennan family, for instance. You foreclosed on their farm and turned it into a shopping center. Mr. Brennan lost everything and committed suicide last year." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He remembered the Brennan acquisition. Good farmland, perfect location, profitable development opportunity. He'd never thought about the human cost. "Or the Rodriguez electronics case," Agent Chen continued. "You bought their family business, fired everyone, and moved production to Malaysia. 3 generations of work destroyed in 6 months. Each case they mentioned brought back memories that now felt like accusations. Faces he'd never bothered to remember. Lives he'd casually ruined for percentage points on profit reports. "The corrosive agent used on your plane," Agent Rodriguez said, "is military grade. Not something you buy at the local hardware store. Whoever did this had serious resources and chemistry knowledge." Marcus glanced toward the kitchen, where Bobby was pretending to do homework. Chemistry knowledge. He thought about Lucy's impossible tablet, Tommy's advanced electronics, Jake's hacking abilities that shouldn't exist in a 14-year-old. "Is there anything else you can tell us?" Agent Chen asked. "Any detail about the crash that might help our investigation?" Marcus made a decision that surprised himself. "No, Agent Chen, I've told you everything I know." After the FBI agents left, Lucy emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thank you," she said simply, handing him one of the chipped mugs. "For what?" "For not mentioning us, for protecting our family." Marcus sipped the terrible coffee and realized it was the best coffee he'd ever tasted. "You saved my life. It seemed like the least I could do." That evening, Tommy showed him something that made Marcus question everything he thought he knew about reality. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in Tommy's room was a workshop that belonged in a science fiction movie. Circuits that defied known physics, computers that processed information faster than anything Marcus had seen, and devices that seemed to bend the laws of nature. "How is any of this possible?" Marcus whispered. "Foster care," Tommy said with a bitter smile. "When kids with unusual abilities get lost in the system, sometimes they end up in places that teach them things they shouldn't know. We were lucky. We found each other." "Lucky?" Bobby appeared in the doorway. "The Peterson Institute for Gifted Youth. They told us we were special, that we were going to help make the world better. What they really wanted was to turn us into weapons." Marcus felt sick. "You escaped?" "We escaped," Jake confirmed, joining his brothers, "but not before we learned what we needed to survive. Lucy's mathematical abilities, Tommy's electronics mastery, my computer skills, Bobby's chemistry knowledge. They're real, but they came at a cost." Lucy appeared last, looking every bit the 8-year-old child she was, except for those ancient eyes. "The cost was trusting anyone ever again, until now." She looked directly at Marcus. "You're the first adult we've saved instead of hiding from. The question is, what are you going to do with this second chance we've given you?" 3 weeks later, Marcus was unloading supplies at the construction site when Red Murphy approached with an expression that meant trouble. "Wellington, we need to talk." Marcus set down the heavy toolbox and wiped sweat from his forehead. His hands had grown calloused, his back had strengthened, and he could now work a full day without feeling like he might die from exhaustion. "The FBI came by asking questions about you," Red continued. "Seems they're very interested in your new living arrangements. They find it mighty suspicious that a billionaire is suddenly living in a trailer park with 4 kids he supposedly never met before." Marcus felt ice in his stomach. "What did you tell them?" I told them you're the hardest working guy I've seen in 20 years of construction, that you show up early, work late, and never complain. But Wellington, Red's voice dropped to a whisper, they're building a case that you faked your own death attempt for insurance money or sympathy. They think those kids are somehow involved in a con game. That evening, Marcus found the Patterson children huddled around Tommy's laptop in the kitchen, their faces grim with worry. "They're freezing our bank accounts," Jake said without preamble. "FBI Financial Investigation Unit. They're claiming the money transfers were made under duress and might be part of a larger fraud scheme." Marcus sat down heavily on one of the mismatched kitchen chairs. "They think I orchestrated the whole thing." "Worse," Lucy said. "They think we're criminals. Child prodigies running an elaborate con game. They're talking about separating us, putting us back into foster care while they investigate." Bobby's jaw tightened with anger. "We're not going back to that system. We'll disappear first." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You won't run. You shouldn't have to run." He stood up, pacing the tiny kitchen like a caged animal. "This is my fault. My past finally caught up with all of us." Tommy looked up from his laptop. "There's something else. I've been monitoring communications, and I found something disturbing. The Peterson Institute, the place where we learned our abilities, they've been looking for us. They want us back." "Why?" Marcus asked. The four children exchanged glances full of shared nightmares. "Because," Lucy said quietly, "we weren't the only children they experimented on. We were just the only ones who escaped, and now they know where we are." Jake pulled up files on his computer. Surveillance photos of the trailer park, aerial shots of the construction site where Marcus worked, even images of Marcus himself taken with long-range cameras. "They've been watching us for weeks," he said. "Ever since your plane crash made the news, they recognized us in news footage of the airport." Marcus stared at the photos, realizing the magnitude of danger these children faced. "What do they want?" Bobby's voice was cold as winter. "They want to turn us into weapons, perfect child soldiers with abilities that governments would kill for. We know too much about their illegal experiments, and we're proof that their methods work." "The FBI investigation is just the beginning," Tommy added. "If Peterson gets custody of us through official channels, we disappear forever. Legally." Marcus felt something burning in his chest, a protective rage he'd never experienced before. These children had saved his life, given him a chance at redemption, and shown him what family could mean. Now they were in danger because of their association with him. "No," he said with deadly certainty. "I won't let that happen." Lucy studied his face with those ancient eyes. "What are you thinking, Mr. Wellington?" Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a man who'd built an empire by being more ruthless than his enemies. "I'm thinking it's time to remind the world that Marcus Wellington might be broke, but he's far from powerless. And anyone who threatens this family is about to learn what a very expensive mistake looks like." Dr. Elizabeth Peterson stepped out of the black SUV in front of the trailer park, her cold eyes scanning the rows of mobile homes like a predator selecting prey. Behind her, 4 men in dark suits emerged from 2 additional vehicles, the kind of men who solved problems that couldn't be handled through legal channels. Marcus watched from behind the curtains of the Patterson trailer, his jaw clenched with controlled fury. 3 days of planning had led to this moment, led to 3 days of calling in favors from people who still owed him, despite his financial ruin. "She's here," he announced to the children. Lucy, Tommy, Jake and Bobby stood together in the living room, no longer looking like ordinary children but like young warriors preparing for battle. Their weeks of fear had crystallized into cold determination. "Remember the plan," Bobby said, checking the small device Tommy had built. "We stick together no matter what happens." Dr. Peterson knocked on the trailer door with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Marcus opened it, blocking her view of the children behind him. "Mr. Wellington," she said with a smile that never reached her eyes. "I'm Dr. Peterson from Child Protective Services. We need to discuss the welfare of the 4 minors in your custody." "Child Protective Services?" Marcus stepped aside to let her enter, knowing she was lying but playing along. "I wasn't aware there were any concerns." Dr. Peterson's gaze immediately locked onto the Patterson children. Hello, Lucy, Tommy, Jake, Bobby. It's time to come home. This is our home, Lucy said, her small voice carrying steel. No, child. Your home is where you can receive proper care and education suited to your unique abilities. Dr. Peterson gestured to her companions. These gentlemen are here to ensure your safe transport. Marcus stepped between Dr. Peterson and the children. I don't think so. Dr. Peterson's pleasant mask slipped. Mr. Wellington, you have no legal authority here. These children are wards of the state, and I have full custody rights. Actually, said a new voice from the trailer's doorway, that's where you're wrong. FBI agent Sarah Chen entered, followed by Agent Rodriguez and 4 federal marshals. Dr. Peterson's face went pale. Dr. Elizabeth Peterson, Agent Chen said, you're under arrest for conspiracy to kidnap, child endangerment, and violation of federal laws regarding human experimentation. The men in suits reached inside their jackets, but found themselves facing federal weapons drawn faster than they could react. I wouldn't, Agent Rodriguez advised. We know exactly who you work for and what you've done to children in your care. Dr. Peterson's composure cracked completely. You can't prove anything. Marcus stepped forward, holding up a small recording device. Actually, we can. Amazing what people will confess when they think they're talking to a broken billionaire with no connections. For 3 days, Marcus had used every contact, every favor, every piece of leverage he'd accumulated during his years of corporate warfare. He'd convinced Dr. Peterson that he was desperate to get rid of the children, that he'd cooperate fully in exchange for immunity from investigation. He'd recorded every word of her plans for the Patterson children. The Peterson Institute is finished, Agent Chen announced as she handcuffed Dr. Peterson. Your illegal experiments, your abuse of vulnerable children, your underground government contracts, all of it is being exposed. As the federal agents led Dr. Peterson and her men away, Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders that he'd carried without realizing it. Lucy walked over to him, her ancient eyes now showing something he'd never seen before. Trust. Thank you, she said simply. Marcus knelt down to her eye level. Thank you for teaching me what family means. Outside, Denver's lights twinkled in the darkness, but for the first time since the plane crash, Marcus felt like he was home. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the kitchen of their new house. Not a mansion, but a real home, with enough bedrooms for everyone, and a backyard where Tommy could build his inventions without neighbors complaining. He was making breakfast, his hands steady as he flipped pancakes, a skill he'd never imagined learning. The house had been purchased with money the FBI recovered from Peterson Institute accounts, funds that rightfully belonged to the children who'd been exploited there. The Patterson children were now legally free, with Marcus as their guardian, a process that had required more paperwork than his largest corporate acquisitions. Smells good in here, Bobby said, entering the kitchen in his school clothes. At 17, he'd grown another 3 inches and was being recruited by colleges for both his academic achievements and his football skills. Jake followed, backpack slung over his shoulder, looking every bit the normal 15-year-old, except for the laptop he carried everywhere. His computer skills had earned him a position as a consultant for the FBI's cybercrime division, work he did after school and on weekends. Tommy bounded in next, now 13, and holding a prototype device that looked like something from a science fiction movie. I think I figured out how to make renewable energy storage more efficient, he announced casually, as if he hadn't just solved one of the world's major technological challenges. Lucy appeared last, 9 years old now, and looking more like a regular child than the ancient soul who'd saved his life. She still had those wise eyes, but they now sparkled with the joy that every child deserved. Good morning, Dad, she said, and Marcus felt his heart swell every time she used that word. Good morning, sweetheart. Ready for your math competition today? Lucy nodded, sitting at the kitchen table where Marcus placed a stack of perfectly golden pancakes. Mrs. Henderson says I might qualify for the national championship. Of course you will, Marcus said, ruffling her hair. You're Lucy Patterson. You can do anything. The doorbell rang and Bobby went to answer it. It's Agent Chen, he called back. Marcus wiped his hands on his apron, something he never would have imagined owning 6 months ago, and went to greet their visitor. Morning, Agent Chen. Coffee? Please, she said, entering their warm, chaotic, perfectly imperfect home. I have news about Dr. Peterson's trial. They gathered around the kitchen table, this family that had been forged in crisis and strengthened by love, while Agent Chen shared the details of justice finally served. 25 years to life, she announced. Her entire network has been dismantled. Every child who was exploited has been found and is receiving proper care. Marcus looked around the table at his children, and they were his children now, in every way that mattered. Bobby, heading to college on a full scholarship, but planning to study education so he could protect other vulnerable kids. Jake, using his abilities to catch criminals instead of hiding from them. Tommy, channeling his genius into inventions that would help humanity instead of weapons that would destroy it. And Lucy, brilliant and kind, and finally allowed to be a child. What about the money? Marcus asked. The billions that were transferred? Agent Chen smiled. The courts have ruled that the transfer was made under extreme duress to save your life. However, given the source of your original wealth and the circumstances. She slid papers across the table. The Patterson Foundation has been established. The money will be used for education, child welfare, and supporting families affected by corporate malfeasance. Marcus signed the papers without hesitation. Perfect. After Agent Chen left, the family finished breakfast and prepared for their day. Bobby to his senior year of high school, Jake to his sophomore year, Tommy to 8th grade, and Lucy to 4th grade. Marcus would drop them off on his way to his new job managing a non-profit that helped unemployed workers find new careers. As they piled into their used SUV, reliable, safe, and large enough for their family, Lucy turned to Marcus. Do you miss it? She asked, being rich and powerful. Marcus looked at his family, at the house that was filled with laughter instead of silence, at the life they'd built from the ashes of his former existence. I've never been richer, he said, meaning every word, and I've never had more power than I do right now, the power to protect the people I love and maybe make the world a little bit better. As they drove through Denver's morning traffic, Marcus reflected on the impossible journey that had brought him here. A plane crash that should have killed him. 4 extraordinary children who'd chosen mercy over revenge. A second chance that had cost him everything and given him infinitely more. The radio played softly as they drove, and Lucy reached forward to turn up the volume. It was a song about second chances, about finding home in unexpected places, about love being stronger than any force on earth. Marcus smiled, thinking about his father's words that had haunted him during those terrifying minutes at 37,000 feet. Money can't buy you out of every problem, son. His father had been right, of course. Money couldn't buy love, couldn't buy family, couldn't buy redemption. But sometimes, if you were impossibly lucky, those things could be given to you by an 8-year-old girl with ancient eyes and a heart big enough to save the world, starting with one broken billionaire who'd finally learned what it meant to be truly wealthy.